Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about a migrant who came to Australia in the early sort of stages of the very big beginning of the mass migration. So we're talking around 2001, sort of around there. Um, and so she's been here for just over 20 years. She arrived when she was like 22, so she's in her mid 40s sort of now, and she comes from a dirt poor third world country. And I was sitting next to her at a dinner, sort of a dinner gathering, dinner party, I guess. And typically with these people, they're quite sort of chippy on shoulder about it, and she had that, but whereas many others are unwilling or reluctant or don't like talking about their views and attitudes to migration and coming from a very poor country to a comparatively very rich country. She, on the other hand, I couldn't shut her up. She was not only wanted to talk about it, but fairly gushed with all sorts of declarations and assertions and views. So it became a good source of how do migrants feel when they what are their views and attitudes and beliefs after they've been in the West for 20 odd years. So this essay is really to talk about that conversation and explore the issues in and around migration and the issues particularly around third world corrupt peasants coming to the West. Now she's definitely a peasant. I doubt she'd be even 5 foot tall. 147 centimeters tall, and she's as round as she's tall. So, but anyway, so she was talking about it that in her dirt poor country where $5,000 US a year has got you looking pretty good. Her family was kind of middle class, lower middle class, but they had connections to sort of one of the village heavies and who managed to get her into the local university, and she studied some sociology, social studies bullshit course, and even bribed the lecturer to get a master's. And her subject was the language that was spoken in some island, millions of years ago, whatever. The language was spoken some island off the coast of the poor third world country she came from. Hardly a lot of rigor or exactitude in that bullshit waste of a course. But anyway, she had that. She did English all the way through high school, and she did say, look, the only way to get ahead and get anywhere and where she comes from is to, unless if you're not born into money, is to bribe people, steal it, or migrate to a first world country. And so she said that's what anybody who's got any get up and go, does those things. Now she pointed out how she's quite casual. She bribed her family, sort of bribed everybody to get her the education or the certificates that she had. I mean, talking to her, I doubt she could have got anything on her own merit, but she'd had the English, which again she'd done all the way through high school. Additional bribes to get her to come to migrate to a first world country. So then the Australian embassy, where it was, they were just open about no, we just bribe people, and something like $20 US is enough to get what you want for people that are not being paid so well in a third world country. So anyway, she comes to Australia, and to her credit, she, given how unattractive she was, I was surprised she managed to find a white boy to marry, a local boy, and had children. And so now she isn't particularly concerned about being Western, and does just enough so she can extract what she wants out of the system here. But she does want her children to become Western. She doesn't want them to be third world peasants. She wants them to be in the West, doing well in school, getting a good education, that sort of thing. So there's a couple of things she's doing there that's quite different from what a lot of others do. Marrying the local white boy, and really wanting her children to become local, Australian first world citizens. So that already separates her from a lot of most of the others, in fact. So anyway, we're talking about why is her country, I didn't phrase it quite like this, but I'm paraphrasing it. Why is her country dirt poor? Now, she talks about, her head is filled with the World Economic Forum, United Nations, globalist propaganda. The only reason these countries are dirt poor is because of colonialism. Colonialism did it, because not only did the colonials steal the confidence that these people needed to succeed on their own, but also stole all their wealth. So, her country and all the third world countries would have been incredibly rich and powerful, influential, prestigious, and harmonious, if only damn Whitey hadn't come along and fucked it up. Those damn fucking Nazis. So that now she parroted that view out, and I could tell she didn't give it any thought. It was like her stock standard excuse. And by the way, peasants from the third world and the associated propagandists, it's their standard excuse. The only reason we're poor isn't it's only because those damn white people stole everything. The Indians, the Pakistanis, everyone fucking says that these days. Now the flip side of that is, why is the white countries rich? Well, only because they stole everything. They'd be dirt poor like everyone else if they hadn't stolen from us. So all right then. Well, that's it now. Okay. Well, in your particular case, your country, it hasn't been a colony, like a European colony, for like 120 years, 118 years. So how can colonialism be the problem? Well, even though we have been independent for that long, the colonialists stole all our confidence, and so we don't believe we can do it, and that's why we're poor. All right then. Well, your country, though, was a dirt poor basket case before the Europeans turned up. How do you account for that? Oh, well, hey, what's that got to do with anything? That's ancient history. Who's worried about that? No, really. They were dirt poor before the Europeans turned up. Dirt poor before the Europeans turned up. It's dirt poor after the Europeans left. So clearly it can't be just colonialism. There's got to be other factors at play here. Well, she kind of concedes. Yeah, look, and if you press her on it, she'll sort. Yeah, well, my people are actually very lazy. They're very corrupt. Nobody can be bothered investing in the future. The government comes out with all these arbitrary taxes. So as soon as you get any wealth together, somebody with a lot of connections in government or the police can come along, and then you got to pay bribes, and then you got to pay protection money to the local goons, and you end up with nothing. It's kind of not worth. It's almost not worth amassing wealth or anything like that. It's just not worth it, she says, because someone will come along and be offended by that, or take it off you, or even kill you for that matter. So she said, people just don't bother. And she said no one's got pride in their country, or even pride in their city or anything like that. Now, her idea that the colonials sort of ruined it for everybody, that in her place, the European colonists, they really established two quite substantial trading ports, but outside of that, they didn't really go anywhere or do much. So the areas that were touched by them were in fact the most prosperous today. The areas where they didn't go or didn't have anything to do with it are the least prosperous. So that this idea that the Europeans took everything and left nothing, that falls over again. So I presented that to her, and she said, "Oh, well, yeah, I guess." And now, then, looking at why a white country is rich, is it because they stole everything? I mean, when you come here, look, in this Australia, for example, is Australia anywhere near as corrupt as your country? Oh, no, nowhere near as corrupt. Well, the trains run on time, the buses run on time. There are courts of law. There are, private property is protected by the law. Or all these things are fast disappearing as a consequence of the globalists. By the way, you have elections and these sorts of things. do you agree that would have an effect on wealth? Oh, there's no question of it. Those are big contributors to wealth. Well, now come back to your idea. The only reason the white West is rich is because they stole everything. When you freely concede that all these systems, procedures, and structure and organization and technology, what about the standard of education? It's a million times more rigorous and exacting than it is in my country, and and so on. So she concedes all these things and says, well, they might have some effect. And once you talk it through, she will finally sort of say, well, it wasn't only colonialism, and it's not only that the white people started, they're just much better organized, much more efficient, much better educated. They've got more pride in their country. There's the rule of law and courts of law and these sorts of things. And she does concede those things again. As I didn't say this to her, but even though we're losing them as a result of the globalists who are desperate to crush all that stuff just so they can walk in and take over. She does agree that those things do make a huge difference to wealth creation and so on. Now, I went back over the scientific sort of age when the Europeans were developing the technologies that would make them the richest countries in the world, including in the early days in the mercantile age of the long ocean-going vessels and technology in terms of sails and rigging and hulls and keels and all sorts of things like that sound like ho-hum today, but back in the time were major technological advances. She admits that the growing of spices and things like that whether it be rubber and cocoa or all sorts of things, the sugar and so on, that are grown in her country now, that the natives before then didn't do it. They lived pretty much hand to mouth as subsistence farmers and hunter-gatherers. So she's quite sort of accepting that there is a chasm of difference technologically and organizationally between the West and between her country and the basket cases in the region. But you have to press her on it before she'll concede that. Now, on the matter of third world people coming to the West, she comes back to this idea that the West has stolen everything from the other poor countries. That's why they're poor, and that's why the rest is rich, because the West are a bunch of fucking Nazi thieves. So she perceives open-ended immigration as an entitlement that every third world peasant should have. And she cites two reasons. One is, again, the aforementioned, the whites stole everything. So these peasants are going to the West to take back what was stolen from them in the first place. But also she says, well, we can't make a go of our own country. She believes her country will be dirt poor 100 years from now. She believes the corruption and the apathy and the laziness, she said, it'll never get fixed. So if you're a peasant that wants to have a better life, you can't do it in your own country. So you have to go to a first world country to get that better life. There's nowhere else you can go to do it. Only a first world country will offer you that opportunity for a better life. So she then claims that the first world countries must take in any third world peasant that wants to do better for themselves. Now, better for themselves can mean you want to start a drug gang or something like that. It can mean anything. You want to work hard and get a job. Now, she concedes that without affirmative action, she wouldn't have anything other than a shit job. She's got a job that she's an affirmative action hire, and she's got a job as like an operations manager, probably paid, I don't know, 1.5 times the average wage, I would guess. And so she's doing okay. And she's without the affirmative action, she'd be a floor cleaner or working at some shit retail job somewhere. There's no way she's capable of anything more than that. So she similarly says we're entitled, third world peasants are entitled to come to a first world country, and they'll bribe whoever they have to do it. then they're entitled through affirmative action to a decent, prestigious job that they could not get under their own merit. Now, I sort of posited to her, well, isn't that equivalent to corruption? Like, really? Because you don't have to meet an independent, impartial standard of excellence to get the job, through competitive interview process. Isn't that the same really as bribing the immigration officer in the country you came from? It's kind of, sort of, but I'm a third world peasant, so I'm entitled to it. So these were the thoughts that she expressed. Now, I think she's probably talking for an awful lot of people that come for the West, particularly in the entitlement things. You're entitled to come to the West, and you're entitled to affirmative action job. When you look at the people, the boat people that go across to Britain, we're entitled to 5-star hotels. We're entitled to mobile phones. We're entitled to this, entitled to that. And if you don't give it to us, you're damn fascist, Nazi, racist. And now, she all the lines she came out with were propaganda lines, in effect. And when I sort of, tried to encourage her to think through the issues step by step and follow the pattern, a sort of disciplined pattern of logic, then she did agree that she had no entitlement to come to the West. The reason our country was poor is because they're a bunch of lazy, corrupt, fucked up, peasants who can't organise can't organise shit. And she does concede those things if you walk her through it, and does so without a whole lot of prompting, really. But that sort of undercuts her narrative, which is, I'm entitled to come here, I'm entitled to a good job. And I don't really care about the facts or care about the reality. And by the way, for the first world country, in this case Australia, if everyone is stupid and dumb enough and that I can so easily, take their wealth and put it in my pocket, undeservingly put it in my pocket, then that's their fault, not mine. I suppose you've got a point there. But I just wanted to sort of cover that and talk about that, because I think it illustrates the attitude of many migrants that come to Australia. Now, is she contributing anything to the country? She's taking the job of what otherwise would have gone to a white person. So she's contributing nothing in economic wealth. She's procreated and had children, so I suppose that's an investment in the future. Given she got the job through affirmative action, she had to bribe someone to get the immigration through to come to Australia. So no, I don't think she's really contributed anything much. Has she taken? Well, she's taken a place that a qualified, as a migrant, she's taken a place that a qualified person could have had. Someone who had real qualifications, not some bullshit social studies degree on some obscure, primeval language or something. So no, she's brought nothing. I don't think she's brought nothing. I don't know about the gene pool, where she's 147 centimetre, extremely rotund, a very peasant-looking sort of woman. I don't know if that's a contribution to anything there. So all round, if it was up to me, she wouldn't have ever made it to here as a migrant, because she brings nothing. There's no qualification. She's got nothing. Maybe the only thing that really got her over the line, she did 6 years in high school, or 5 years, whatever it was, high school of English, and that's probably the only thing but again, she does want her children to be Western and Australian. That's a positive, I guess. But on balance, overall, she's not entitled to be here, in my view. In a first world country, she's brought nothing, contributed nothing. Are there cases that are worse than hers? Well, yeah, but still, she's at the bottom. Why do third world peasants need to come to the West when they've got no qualifications or skills or anything to offer? You've been with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.